All right, gang, we're going to take a look at different economic priorities and goals that every society, every country, and even every individual might have. First is a quick recap on economic systems. Remember, an economy, that is simply the way a country manages its money and resources to buy, sell, and produce goods and services. Then we have an economic system, which describes how a country's economy is organized. You have a command system on one end, you have a market system on the other, and then everywhere in between you have that mixed system. Some of them are a little bit more market, some of them are a little bit more command, but they're also on that spectrum. And then due to the concept of scarcity, limited resources, every country, every nation, every individual must answer three basic economic questions. What are we going to make? How are we going to make it, and for whom? And that for whom, that last question, might be the trickiest question as we try and figure out, well, who is going to get it? Who is going to get whatever it happens to be? And of course, their answer to that depends on their priorities. It depends on their goals, right? We have 6 different economic priorities or 6 different economic goals: freedom, efficiency, equity, growth, security, and stability. Our mission, our task right now is going to be to get a quick overview of each of those 6 goals. As we do, I want you to think about what they mean to you. Think about each of those priorities, and think about which ones resonate with you, and think about which ones seem most important to you as an individual, because you are, of course, a part of our larger collective society. First one, economic freedom. Something that we all value, we all take it near and dear to our hearts, especially here in the United States. Economic freedom is this concept that individuals can make their own economic decisions without interference from government. So without or with very minimal rules or regulations on economic choices. You can choose the type of candy bar you want, Snickers. You can choose the type of car you want. I'll take a Tesla. Or the house you want. Something nice, I guess, a roof over my head, not too picky. But you get to make those choices. You can also choose, what jobs you want to work, what you want to do to make money. You can also choose how you want to do that, how you want to buy and sell things, how stuff is made. All of these relate to economic freedom. Now, as a very concrete example, let's talk about something in the United States. Where we have a high degree of economic freedom, but it's not unlimited. For example, tobacco products. They are legal in the United States as long as you are over the age of 18. We have said as a society we'll allow the sale and production and purchase of tobacco products, but only to a segment of the population, those 18 and older. So I could start a tobacco store and I could sell those tobacco products to people over the age of 18. Now, I could also say, economic freedom. I should be able to sell my tobacco products to anyone when I want. Tobacco products for preschoolers. Huzzah! And you'd be like, Canton, dude, slow down. We're not selling tobacco products to preschoolers. And I might kick and scream and whine and throw a fit about, how I should be able to because freedom, gosh darn it. Yeah, true. However, as a society, we've said we have a high degree of economic freedom, but it is not unlimited economic freedom. That's right. We do not have unlimited economic freedom. We're going to put some limits on that. And so that's why things like tobacco products or alcohol products, for example, are restricted. That's why we also have child labor laws, right? That's why we say, under a certain age, you're not allowed to work at all. And then under another certain age level, there's only certain types of jobs or certain hours of the day that you can work. Again, there are rules that are put in place that, yes, on a level they do clamp down, they do restrict freedom, but that is something that we as a society have decided that we are comfortable with and that we are going to do. So that is economic freedom. Next goal, economic efficiency. If you do something very efficiently or with a high degree of efficiency, you do it well and you do it typically quickly, though it doesn't always have to do with speed. But think about your chores. You got to rake the yard. You get out there in the morning, you get all those leaves raked up, you get them bagged, you get them put out by the road, and you do it without a lot of dawdling, without a lot of waste. You just get it done and you get all of those leaves scooped up. Economic efficiency is a similar idea where you make the most of society's resources, including you. That's right, you and I, we are a resource. We learned yesterday about natural resources as well as human resources, but we make the most of our resources with the least amount of waste. And economically speaking, an unemployed worker, an unemployed person, that would be considered a wasted resource. And so in a society that really values economic efficiency, they're going to push for little to no unemployment, even if that means providing jobs for certain people. We saw this in our own United States history. You think back to the era of the Great Depression, the Civilian Conservation Corps, the Works Progress Administration. Those were governmental programs designed to give jobs, to give employment to people who are unemployed, right? It was this widespread unemployment during the Great Depression. The government stepped in and said, whoa, man, we got to put people back to work. And it's not like we can just tell people, oh, go find a job, go down to the job store. That's not how the world works. It's not always that easy. And so in a society that values economic efficiency, we will make sure jobs are available. And if they're not, we'll also provide training and resources for folks that might need it. A concrete example, for example, in the United States, out west in Appalachia, West Virginia, the coal industry, it's an industry that kind of ebbs and flows, and there's been talk about how the coal industry might be dying. It might be a dying industry. So what do you do with those tens of thousands of workers in those towns and those communities that rely on coal for an economic resource as a job? Well, instead of saying, oh, sorry, you're out of luck, the coal mine shut down, we say, you know what, you might be out of luck in terms of working in a coal mine, but we're going to provide training. We're going to provide education. We're going to make sure that you have the tools that you need. We'll cover the cost of that, and we'll help you get the new tools, new resources, new training you need so that you can go find a job elsewhere. Because as a society that values economic efficiency, the idea is we're going to maximize our resources with the least amount of waste. Next up is economic equity. Equity is a tricky one. It's a very tricky one. It's not to be confused with economic equality. Economic equity basically says that fairness and justice are paramount. They're important. We ensure that everyone gets their fair share. Now notice a couple of things. Again, let me repeat it. Equity does not mean equality. It doesn't mean everyone gets the same. It just means everyone gets their fair share. But now that is a tricky word, isn't it? That F word, fairness. Yeah, what do we do about that? Because how many times in our lives have we said, that's not fair, right? What is fair? That's up to kind of each individual. We each have our own determination about what is and is not fair. And then individuals as a society, we make a societal, a collective determination about what is and is not fair. That's just kind of how things are done. And there's some questions that you see there. What is fair? And I'm not making a comment here. I'll let you come up with your own choices, your own decisions on this. But is it fair that a CEO, say the CEO of a giant, massive corporation, maybe Jeff Bezos for Amazon, for example, that makes hundreds of millions of dollars, well, the workers, the folks who are working in the warehouses or the delivery workers, that they're making minimum wage or a little bit above minimum wage, is that fair that he is making hundreds or thousands of times more in a year than the workers are? Some folks would say, heck yeah, that's fair. He is the CEO. He is the founder. He sinks and swims with that corporation. He should make as much money as he possibly can. It's not, his job to make sure that the workers make more money. Others would say, whoa, hold the phone here 1 second. No one's saying that Jeff Bezos can't make hundreds of millions of dollars, but what we are saying is that maybe the folks who are working for him should make a little bit more money and that they should be provided for. Some folks would look at that and say, that gap, that's fair. That's life. That's reality. Others would say, let's maybe close that gap. Let's maybe bring up the bottom a little bit. Others would say, well, let's maybe lower the top a little bit. There's all these different discussions, very valid discussions about what is and is not fair economically speaking, right? And these are questions that societies determine, and individuals have our own thoughts about fair and not fair. What is and is not fair? Another hypothetical, is it fair that women on the whole, on the average as a group, earn less than men? Some would say, sure, that's fair, that's reality, that's life, and they make their own choices, women that is, make their own choices economically, and that contributes to them earning less, on the whole dollar for dollar. Others would say, wait a second, no, that's not fair. We should ensure that pay is the same. But again, equity does not mean equality, and it's a really tricky one because determining what is and is not fair is really tricky. There's an image on your screen there talking about equality versus equity. You've probably seen this before, and if you haven't, I really like how it just quickly shows the difference between equality and equity. On the left, you see that equality. Everyone is getting the same. They all got the same box. But it doesn't work because the tallest dude, he can still see over the fence, and our little guy, I can relate, still can't see over the fence. Compare that with our image on the right. When they're not getting the same, but what they're getting what they need. The taller fellow there, he doesn't need a box, so he doesn't get a box. Compared to our little shorter dude, he needs 2 boxes, so he gets 2 boxes. That is kind of how you can illustrate this concept of equity, ensuring that everyone gets what they need. If you don't need it, you don't get it. If you do need it, you do get it. It's a really nice concept. It's a really simple concept to grasp at times, but it's also kind of a tricky concept to get everyone on board with because there is that discussion. Some folks would look on the left and say, no, everyone should get the the same. Others would say, no, everyone should get what they need. And others would say, no, no one should get anything. And again, equity, equality, that is a priority that different societies value to different degrees. Then we have economic growth. This idea of economic growth, with it, the goal is to produce more, to produce better, right? To grow your economy, produce more stuff, produce better stuff. And this can lead to a higher standard of living. Think about food, for example. Think about farming. We now are able to grow an abundance of crops. As a planet, we have enough food to feed the planet. And so hunger and malnourishment, that's not necessarily a lack of food, it's more of a lack of access, because through growth, we are able to produce enough. We're able to produce more. It's now just kind of a question of access versus producing enough. And economic growth tends to lead to a higher standard of living, right? Imagine a world without cars or electricity or indoor plumbing. But it also, economic growth can just sometimes lead to making things for the sake of making things and buying things for the sake of buying things. Each year a new phone comes out. Each year a new gaming system, right? And each year a new model of vehicle. And year after year it's this idea of there's these slight improvements. I've got an iPhone 11, but gosh dang it, I need an iPhone 12, and next year I'm going to need an iPhone 13, right? And now 3 years later you've got 3 phones. And so economic growth can also be a little bit wasteful, if not put into check. And yes, it's good to have improvements in quality of living and standard of living, but sometimes, maybe we got to tone down and pull back on that growth a little bit so our landfills aren't being overflowed with these perfectly good, devices. In the case of electronic waste, economic growth. Economic growth also leads to these 2 videos. I'll link to them. There's a company called Boston Dynamic, and they have invested their time in autonomous AI robots, basically. So you got the robot dog and the robot person that basically operate on their own. Kind of awesome, super creepy. Yeah, I'm just going to say that. But go ahead, watch those videos and be simultaneously in awe and freaked out. And then we have economic security. Economic security, the goal here is to provide economic support to the less fortunate so they can live a decent life. This doesn't mean, hey, Teslas for everyone, steak dinners for everyone, McMansions for everyone. It doesn't mean that. It just means that we're going to ensure a basic standard of living for the folks in our society. And if folks can't reach that on their own, we're going to help provide it for them. And so it's saying, if you're hungry, we will feed you. If you need shelter, we'll make sure you have a roof over your head. If you need health care, we will make sure you have access to health care, right? And this is kind of a tricky one, and it can be very difficult to balance with economic freedom. Take health care, for example. There are many countries around the world, Canada, Germany, Sweden, Norway, many countries around the world that provide health care to their citizens. They've said as a society, economic security in terms of health care is something that we value, and so we want to make sure that folks have access to health care, no matter who they are. So we're going to provide that for our citizens, for our society. The United States, we've said, no, we place a higher priority on economic freedom, and healthcare is available, and we will provide it to the most in need. But if you're somewhere in between, you're kind of on your own. We're not going to provide it for everyone. We're not going to make it accessible necessarily to everyone, because we are placing a higher priority, in this case in the United States, on economic freedom. Because in order to balance economic security, you also have to weigh it against economic freedom. And so in the case of healthcare, for example, where does this healthcare come from, right? When you see countries providing healthcare to their citizens, it's not like there's some healthcare fairy, boop, providing healthcare. Society has said, nope, you know what? We're going to pay a little bit more in taxes and put more of our tax money towards healthcare, and we're going to put less of our tax money towards something else, or we're just going to pay more in taxes as a society because we want to ensure everyone has access to that. In the United States, we've said, nope, we want to let individuals keep more of the money that they earn and pay less in taxes, because that's more economic freedom when you keep more of what you earn. That's a tough one to weigh. That's a tough one to balance. And there's, again, very good discussion to be had around that. And there's a lot of valid points about, which is more important, security or freedom. Again, it's not up to me to decide. It is up to you to decide. Then we have economic stability. Economic stability is this concept that the goods and services that people count on, that they're available when we want them, that your job is available when you want it. In the United States, on the whole, we have a very stable economy. However, There are definitely moments in time, including right now in the midst of a COVID pandemic, when our economic stability, our economic world is turned upside down, right? When our economy is in flux and it's all over the place. And in that case, you've got this era of instability, and not only are jobs unstable and folks are going, is my job going to be there next week, next month? What is that going to look like? But even when you go to the grocery store, early on, all the jokes were, yeah, the shelves are empty, there's no more TP, and there were jokes made about that and memes and all that good stuff. But that's also a very real thing. That was economic instability. You'd go to the store and it's like, are they going to have the products that I need? Generally speaking, in the United States, we don't encounter economic instability all that often, and when we do, it's very jarring because it's a very real concern. When jobs or products in the store, when they're not available the way that we are used to them being available. And so a society that values stability, they might reduce growth a little bit. They might say, you know what, growth, that's great, but we prefer stability. And so we're not going to be taking these big moves forward because we want to be a little bit more stable, economic stability. And so those are our 6 goals: freedom, efficiency, equity, growth, security, and stability. Each individual, each society has a higher priority on some of these more than others. Freedom, the ability to make your own choices. Efficiency, using all of your resources. Equity, this idea of fairness and justice. Growth, we're going to produce more and we're going to produce better. Security, we're going to make sure everyone's provided for. And stability, we're going to make sure things are predictable. We're going to make sure that we can plan ahead. Now, a society that has an economic system more on the market side, you're more likely to see freedom and growth. Those are values that you're going to be more likely to see in a more market-based economy, an economy that has less government involvement, less governmental regulation. There's going to be winners, but for winners there are losers, and I don't mean that as an insult. I just mean that for every person who is making it at the top and making big bucks and has this freedom and this growth, there are going to be people on the bottom who aren't going to be making it, economically speaking. And what do you do about them, right? How do you handle that? Where do you balance in security and equity, or do you? Maybe you say, no, that's just it's dog-eat-dog world, winners and losers. And then on the other end of the spectrum, on a very more command side of things, you will see more security. You will see more equity. We'll see more of folks being provided for. You will have less freedom. You'll have less growth, but we'll make sure that everyone's provided for. And again, both of those, whoa, I need to move. Both of those might sound wonderful and great, but we got to balance that. And individuals have their own views on that. Individual societies and communities, nations, they all take a different approach to balancing those 6 goals. Your task now is going to be to take those 6 goals, to rank them from the most important to the least important in your world. I want you to think about that and think about why it is that you value what you value and why it is that you don't value or value not as much what you don't value as much. There we go. Hope you're doing well. Let me know if you need anything. Talk to you later. See ya.